It's fair to say that Donald Campbell was always destined to be a record breaker. When Donald was born in 1921, his father Malcolm had already been racing cars at Brooklands for more than 10 years. By the time Donald was 14, his father was one of the most famous men in the world, having broken the world land speed record 9 times. Not surprisingly, Donald idolized him. Donald Malcolm Campbell was born at Canbury House, Kingston upon Thames, England, on the 23rd of March 1921, the first child of Malcolm and Dorothy Campbell. Throughout his schooling, Donald was witness to his father breaking a succession of world speed records, both on land and latterly on the water. Donald volunteered for the Royal Air Force at the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, but lasting effects of the rheumatic fever he'd contracted during childhood led to his application being rejected. A fierce patriot, now unable to fight for his country, Campbell went to work for a coach building company before becoming a shareholder in tool manufacturers Kinney Engineering. At the end of the war, Donald married Daphne Harvey, and his only child Gina was born in 1946. Unusually for a prominent record breaker from that era, Malcolm, now Sir Malcolm Campbell, died peacefully in his bed in the early hours of New Year's Day 1949 after suffering a stroke. Perhaps in an attempt to keep Donald from following in his own record-breaking footsteps, Malcolm's will left neither the current Bluebird car or the K4 hydroplane to his son. Instead, they were to be auctioned, the proceeds to be placed in a trust fund for Malcolm's grandchildren. Donald refused to be thwarted by his father's final wishes and bought both vehicles himself. It would not be long before they became much more than souvenirs to Donald. In early 1949, rumours surfaced of a planned American attempt to beat Malcolm's 10-year-old world water speed record of 141 miles per hour. Donald's patriotism and pride in his father's achievements led to a momentous decision. Donald would use Bluebird K4 to defend the water speed record for Britain. Unfortunately, for novice record challenger Donald, it would not be as simple as that. Malcolm had converted the K4 hydroplane to jet power in 1947, but the engine had been on loan. When news reached engine manufacturer de Havilland that Donald intended to run K4 powered by their jet, they demanded the engine back. Donald's solution was to sell the 1935 Bluebird car he had bought from his father's estate, and then use the money to buy back a Rolls-Royce R aero engine and other components sold by Malcolm to a local car dealer. With Bluebird K4 converted back to piston engine and propeller, Donald was ready to defend his late father's record. In late July 1949, on Coniston Water in the Lake District, Donald came within 3 miles per hour of becoming the fastest man on water, but a broken gearbox put paid to any more attempts in 1949. As new trials began in late summer 1950, he learned that American Stanley Sayers had raised the record to 160 miles per hour, out of reach of Donald and Bluebird K4 with its conventional propeller. By 1951, Bluebird had been modified with the help of young engineer Lou Norris. K4 was now a prop rider, raised out of the water at speed with only half the propeller in the water to reduce drag. Campbell's team worked towards breaking Sayers' new record and eventually managed to get up to a peak speed of 170 miles per hour, but they crashed Bluebird K4 before a record run could be attempted. With Bluebird K4 wrecked and still no record to his name, Donald needed a new boat. Selling his interest in Kinney Engineering, he commissioned Lou Norris and his brother Ken to design a new, jet-powered Bluebird to be designated K7. In Bluebird K7, Campbell successfully realized his ambition to lift the world water speed record for Britain, first to 202 miles per hour in 1955, and then 5 more times over the ensuing years, up to 260 miles per hour in 1959. For the latter part of the 1950s, Donald Campbell became every bit as well known around the world as his late father, and he made a good living from his record breaking, with significant income from sponsors. In the meantime, each year, British holiday camp impresario Sir Billy Butlin offered a gold trophy and £5,000 to any Briton who could break the world water speed record. By gradually raising the record year on year, Donald repeatedly took Butlin's generous annual prize whilst maintaining a high profile. With broken records came broken relationships. Donald and Daphne had divorced in 1951, and Donald's second marriage had ended the same way in 1957. In late 1958, he married singer Tonya Byrne after a whirlwind romance. They would remain married for the rest of his life. After 5 years of success on the water with Bluebird K7, Donald turned his attention to the world land speed record. Once again, Lou and Ken Norris were commissioned to design a new record breaker, this time the wheel-driven, turbine-powered Bluebird CN7. In 1960, Campbell was lucky to survive crashing Bluebird at 360 miles per hour during an attempt on the record at Bonneville. Over the next 2 years, CN7 was rebuilt and improved, and in 1963, Campbell began trials on Lake Eyre in Australia, with high hopes for the record. Lake Eyre was ideal, a vast, dry, salt lake bed that hadn't seen rain for 9 years. It offered 20 miles in which to run Bluebird to her maximum potential, surely far in excess of the 394 miles per hour record. However, as soon as testing with Bluebird had started, the rains came and flooded the course. Donald had no choice but to abandon the attempt and was widely criticised by the press and sponsors for mismanaging the project. Meanwhile, at Bonneville in the US, Craig Breedlove had run his jet-powered Spirit of America at 407 miles per hour. Although the FIA would not ratify his speed as a new record because the car was not wheel-driven and was technically a tricycle, the writing was on the wall for Donald and Bluebird CN7. If the rules changed, Bluebird CN7's wheel-driven design would struggle to compete with pure jet power. Donald returned to Lake Eyre in 1964, and despite poor conditions on the course, arguments with sponsors, and infighting between team members, he finally managed to become the fastest man on 4 wheels at 403 miles per hour in Bluebird's CN7. Furthermore, in December, Campbell ran his Bluebird K7 hydroplane at 276 miles per hour to lift both water and land speed records in the same year. Donald Campbell is still the only man in history to have achieved this extraordinary double. The rules for the world land speed record were changed in 1964, and it was no longer necessary for vehicles to be wheel-driven. The potential for the record to be raised significantly by thrust-powered cars like Breedlove's Spirit of America was not lost on Donald. Instead of retiring as current holder of both water and land speed records, in July 1965 he announced his intention to build a new Bluebird car to take the record beyond the sound barrier. The Norris brothers were engaged to undertake a design study. The result was Bluebird's CN8, a compact, rocket-powered vehicle developing 36,000 horsepower and capable of carrying Campbell to 850 miles per hour. A publicity model was built. In this photo, it's the vehicle on the left, and Campbell claimed he could have the car on track within 3 years. The Bluebird rocket car failed to generate much interest. The trials and tribulations of Campbell's Australian adventures may have resulted in broken records, but Donald's profile and his relationships with sponsors and British industry in general were waning. In the mid-60s, with the space race and Beatlemania dominating the headlines, patriotic record breaker Donald Campbell was looking like yesterday's man. In an effort to drum up interest and cash for the Bluebird rocket car, Donald turned back to Bluebird K7, still sitting in his garage. Extensive refurbishment, including a new, more powerful jet engine, saw him return the hydroplane to Coniston in late 1966. Difficult weather conditions and a poorly handling Bluebird led to renewed pressure from sponsors and press alike to make good on Campbell's assertion that he could do it again for Britain. By Christmas 1966, Bluebird was running much better, and as 1967 dawned, Campbell and Bluebird were ready. On the evening of January 3rd, 1967, whilst playing cards, Campbell turned up the Ace of Spades, followed by the Queen of Spades. A deeply superstitious man, he noted that this was the same combination of cards that Mary Queen of Scots had turned up the night before she was beheaded. He was heard to remark that he had the most awful premonition that "I am getting the chop this time. I've had the feeling for days." Donald and Bluebird took to the water at dawn on January the 4th, 1967. After a first run across the lake at 297 miles per hour, faster than Bluebird had ever run, Donald turned K7 round and made his return run at over 320 miles per hour. Newsreel cameras at the edge of Coniston Water, the scene of so many of Donald's past triumphs, captured the appalling events that followed. Although the wreckage of Bluebird was found at the bottom of the lake the following day, there was no sign of her brave pilot. Campbell's remains were finally found and recovered from Coniston Water in May 2001, shortly after the wreck of Bluebird K7 had been raised from the lake bed. On the 12th of September 2001, Donald sailed across Coniston Water one final time before being laid to rest in the local cemetery. Although he was just 45 years old when he died, Donald Campbell, holder of multiple world speed records, had repeated his father's success on both land and water. Malcolm would have been proud.